One other thing that scholars often say may well be historical. Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. Now notice why would scholars say this is historical? Well, there's not complete agreement about how it happened. There's the Gospel of John doesn't exactly tell you about the baptism of Jesus by John, but it has Jesus and his disciples also baptized in the Jordan, and it has Jesus very much connected to John the Baptist in the beginning of its Gospel. The other Gospels do have Jesus baptized by John. But notice how the story goes along. All of the writers who have the Gospel of John, who have Jesus baptized by John the Baptist, they have Jesus come to John the Baptist, and they say, I want to be baptized. And John the Baptist says, oh no, I shouldn't baptize you. You're the big kahuna. You're bigger than I am. I'm not worthy to untie your sandals. So I should be baptized by you. I shouldn't be baptizing you. And Jesus says, no, it's okay, baptize me. And so he does it, and then you have the confession and the voice from heaven and that sort of thing. Notice what's going on here. The gospel writers are very concerned because they know that it could be interpreted that John baptizing Jesus makes John superior to Jesus and makes Jesus a disciple of John. And they're not comfortable with that because, of course, they believe Jesus is the Messiah. And so he's therefore superior to John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was just a prophet or a precursor to Jesus. So the story is told to play down this baptism a bit and make Jesus come out as insisting on the baptism, wanting to do it for the right kinds of reasons, but not making Jesus a disciple of John. And also, this tradition about the baptism of Jesus is in different sources in different ways. So again, scholars say the baptism of John the Baptist in baptizing Jesus doesn't look like something early Christians would make up. In fact, you can even see that they try to tone down its implications. So it's not something they're likely to make up. It kind of goes against their tradition of raising Jesus up completely, and therefore it may be historical. Notice what we've got then. We've got two very small details that a lot of scholars would say probably are historical because they seem to be witnessed by more than one source, and they also seem to go against the theological tendency of the documents in which they're found. And they frame the gospel of Jesus. The baptism of Jesus, the beginning of his ministry, and the charge on the cross at the end of his ministry. And now I'm going to back up. Those two events, let's just say, I'm going to argue that those two are certain historical events. But right now let's talk about method. How did I get here? First method, first little rule, and this is something that a lot of people use when they do historical Jesus research. It took all the 20th century for people kind of to develop these rules and to spell them out in scholarship. But this is kind of where we are now. The first rule, multiple attestation. That means when you have more than one independent source that has a saying or an event about Jesus, you tend to give it a little more weight. Now, of course, what are independent sources? If you have something in both Matthew and Luke, that doesn't count as two independent sources, right? Because both Matthew and Luke could have gotten that from Mark, or they could have gotten it from Q. But if you have something in Mark and you have something in John, well, those are two independent sources. If you also have something in the Gospel of Thomas, then most of us scholars would say, well, some people say the Gospel of Thomas may have known the other Gospels, but most of us would say we're going to treat him as an independent source because he's not verbatim quoting the other Gospels most of the time. So if you have an event or a saying that occurs in Mark and John and Q, or in Thomas, those are three independent sources. What if it also occurs in Paul's letters? There's another independent source. As we'll see that there are some places where Paul gives us a little clue about something. And then obviously you can take Q as being one of those sources. So if something is in both Matthew and Luke, but it's not in Mark, then you can say it's in Q. And sometimes people would even say you have one form of a parable that seems to have occurred in Q, and you have a different form of that parable that seems to have occurred in Mark. And then you can say, okay, we have this one parable in two independent sources. One is Q and one is Mark.